Okay, this is 2515 West 5th Street, and we are in Irving, Texas. It took me about 20 minutes to get out here from the downtown. And this is Ruth Paine's residence. And we haven't talked a lot about Ruth Paine, but she ends up being Lee Harvey Oswald's handler after being handed him from George to Mohrenschildt. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But this is a noteworthy address, 2515, because that's the address that Lee Harvey Oswald gave to the Texas School Book Depository when he got employed there, so that when the personnel records were handed over to Lieutenant Jack Revel, the name Lee Harvey Oswald corresponded to the address 2515 West 5th Street. And let me turn this, here it is. There's the house. So this is now it's not his house, but it's where his wife and daughters are staying. They moved out and moved in with Ruth Paine, and Lee Harvey Oswald was living in the rooming house that we looked at earlier over on North Beckley. This is the address. It's his closest thing approximating a home for his little family at this time, and that's why he gives that address. But this is actually Ruth Paine's house, and it's in Irving. So let's talk a little bit about Ruth Paine. Ruth Paine married and settled in Irving, and his name was Michael Paine, who was employed as a research engineer with Bell Helicopter Company. And Ruth was employed as a part-time teacher of the Russian language at St. Mark's School in Dallas. Now, it's interesting, one of the reasons she gave for wanting Marina to move in with her here at this home was so that Marina could teach her Russian. And here, that was a cover, by the way. And here Ruth Paine was teaching Russian at St. Mark's School in Dallas. In 1963, Michael Paine left the family home. They separated. It's kind of interesting how at the same time Lee and Marina separated. At exactly the same time, Michael and Ruth separated. It was an amicable split. According to author Jim Bishop, who wrote The Day Kennedy Was Shot, he called it a friendly estrangement. Ruth continued to live in Irving, and at a party in February of '63, she was introduced to Marina and Lee by George de Mohrenschildt. George de Mohrenschildt was Lee, and we're going to talk about him a little bit later today. George de Mohrenschildt was the original CIA handler for Lee Harvey Oswald, but towards the end handed him off to Ruth Paine, which is precisely the reason Ruth Paine took in Marina and her two children to get them away from Lee, because the fix was in as far as Lee was concerned. On April 24th, '63, this is only 3 months after they met, Marina and her daughter went to live with Ruth Paine in this house. I'll show you this house again. And it's just kind of a little blue-collar neighborhood here. All the homes sort of look the same. Lee then rented a room in Dallas at North Beckley. We saw that in an earlier video. But he stored a lot of his possessions in this here garage, which is going to be interesting. Meanwhile, Ruth Paine helped Oswald get a job at the Texas School Book Depository, which, of course, that was all prearranged. At 12:50 p.m. on November 22nd, 20 minutes after the assassination, Marina had been listening. She was here, and she had been listening to the radio, and she heard about the shooting. And within a short period of time, it was being announced over the radio who the suspect was, and that's her husband. So she ran out to this garage to check and see if her husband's Mannlicher Carcano was still in its place. And according to Marina, it was sitting on a shelf wrapped up in a blanket. So she was relieved. She thought, well, this has to be a mistake of some sort, because his gun is still here. At 1 p.m., 30 minutes after the shooting, 10 minutes later, while searching the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository across town, Deputy Sheriff Seymour Weitzman and DPD Officer Gene Boone discovered a, quote, 7.65 German bolt-action Mauser rifle equipped with a .418 scope and a thick leather brownish-black sling. And this was witnessed by Roger Craig. It was witnessed by several other Dallas police officers. It was actually written into the evidence report and filed away. It was documented. That happened 10 minutes after she checked to see if his gun was still here in the garage, and it was. Buddy Walters took part in a search of the home of Ruth Paine subsequent to the arrest of Oswald. Walters told Eric Tagg that they found 6 or 7 metal filing cabinets full of letters, maps, records, and index cards with names of pro-Castro sympathizers. Now, James DiEugenio, pretty impactful JFK researcher who's still alive, has argued that this cinches the case that the Paines were domestic surveillance agents in the Cold War against communism. When you hear Ruth Paine and Michael Paine's connections to the CIA, that'll even make more sense to you. And by the way, Bell Helicopter is a CIA affiliated company here in Dallas. And so anybody who had a job at Bell Helicopter is essentially working for the agency. And that's where Michael Paine worked. At 3:30 p.m., 3 hours after the shooting, Dallas police claimed when they searched this same garage that they only found an empty blanket. Where Marina had found the gun wrapped in a blanket, they said they only found an empty blanket on the shelf in the garage where Oswald's rifle had allegedly been. And immediately at that time, the description was changed about the gun they found in the Texas School Book Depository from a German Mauser to an Italian 6.5 Mannlicher Carcano carbine. This happened after Dallas police searched Oswald's garage. Now, I'm not one of the Hardy Boys here, but it's pretty clear that when Marina said the gun was there and no one else was in that garage except Dallas police, and at 3:30 they say it wasn't there. At the same time, they changed the description of the German gun to an Italian gun to match Oswald's Italian Mannlicher Carcano. It's pretty obvious what happened right there. They took the gun and they substituted it, swapped it out. Later, Ruth Paine became a key to the Warren Commission and provided detailed information on the activities of Marina and Lee before the assassination. The information, the kind of information that she was able to provide, was only possible if she was surveilling them. It was that detailed. Jim Garrison later suggested that Ruth Paine might have been involved in setting Oswald up as the patsy. Garrison points out that Paine's father had been employed by the Agency for International Development, which is a widely known CIA front. That was her daddy. Then her brother-in-law was also employed by the Agency for International Development in the Washington, D.C. area. Again, that's the front, a CIA front. Her husband, Michael Paine, worked for CIA front Bell Helicopter in Dallas, and Ruth's sister, Sylvia Hyde Hoke, was listed as an employee of the CIA in Falls Church, Virginia, local directory in 1961. Her whole family is CIA. And interestingly, she speaks fluent Russian. He also claims that he had tried to, quote, examine the income tax returns of Ruth and Michael Paine, but was told that they had been classified as secret. And his question was, what was so special about this particular family that made the federal government so protective of it? It has also been learned So that, by the way, is in that JFK movie. They're discussing that at that restaurant meeting about how they can't get tax returns on Ruth and Michael Paine because they were classified. So pretty clear that Ruth Paine and Michael, their separation was sort of arranged, or it was sort of a manufactured event because the timing was right to handle Lee Harvey Oswald. And in order for Marina to move into this home with Ruth, was going to have to be a separation. Michael was going to have to move out to create space. And now they can separate Lee and Marina and go about setting up Oswald to be the patsy and keeping Marina and the kids out of the way. And then allowing Lee to store items in here, which in this garage. I think this is a noteworthy location for a couple reasons. Number one, it is the real address that was on the Texas School Book Depository personnel records, not the 605 Elsbeth that the military intelligence seeded into the investigation. This is the address that he had listed as his home, and this is where his wife and kids lived. 605 Elsbeth was what military intelligence had from a year prior, and that's a big clue how 14 minutes in, Dallas police had the name of their suspect, military intelligence. And then you start to see the machinations of this plot as George de Mohrenschildt hands off the Oswalds to Susan and Michael Paine, to Ruth and Michael Paine. Michael moves out. Ruth invites, within a couple months of having met her, Ruth invites Marina into her house to separate her from Lee. Lee is then, Ruth helps him get a job at the Texas School Book Depository building. Night before the motorcade, the motorcade route is switched to go in front of the Texas School Book Depository instead of straight down Main Street, and the setup is in. The setup has been going strong now for several months, but the patsy has been completely set up. And then the gun that was stored in this garage, Marina said it was there, Dallas police said it wasn't. And immediately upon discovering what kind of gun he had, they changed the description of the gun that they found, which was a German Mauser, as evidenced by multiple people and written down in a report form. It was documented. It was changed to be Oswald's Mannlicher Carcano. And then we get to Buell Wesley Fraser, because then the question is, how did the gun end up in the Texas School Book Depository? How did it get there? And somehow he smuggled it in, right? And then he hid it behind the boxes. So that's where Buell Wesley Fraser comes in, and that's where we're going next. Okay?